It's the first time that I give a talk in an environment like this. It feels horrible. But I'm luckily, what I want to talk about tonight is acceptance. So I will talk myself into that state, and maybe I can, on the way, I can take some of you with me into a place where you make a gesture of welcoming, a gesture of allowing, a gesture of kindness to yourself. And I would like to make this evening an invitation for you to shift down from this mind of trying to get somewhere, trying to fix yourself and others, trying to control your feelings, your thoughts, and trying to control the feelings and thoughts of others, to a place of openness, to a place of connectedness. Really based on your knowing or your sense that something in you is already whole. Something deep in you is already whole, and it wants to emerge. And there's something in you which is already whole. You can see and meet also in other people when you connect that space inside of you. So tonight I want to talk about two very different approaches to healing. And you find these two approaches also in the different meditative traditions, in the different spiritual traditions. And these two different attitudes are, the first one is, there's a problem, we need to fix it, I have a tool, and health and freedom means to get rid of the problem. And there's a path, like in the spiritual tradition one would say there's a path, and it's a long path, and I'm not there yet. This model you can call the discovery model. The development model. The development model. So there's a path, there's a tool, and we are not yet. And then there's another model, which we can call the discovery model. And in the discovery model, we discover the mental health, the freedom. One teacher calls it, one Tibetan teacher calls it, our brilliant sanity, which is already here in this moment. And what I would like to start with is to sit quietly with you for a few moments, for a few minutes. Actually making this shift from the doing mode to relax, to connect with your body and your breath, and make this gesture of friendship, like, it's good enough. And see if you can slide into the vastness of your own being. Like this place where you feel most familiar yourself, but beyond the stories. And as best as you can, allow the feelings you have, the thoughts, the sensation in your body. And notice how the breath is helping you to slide into that place, a soft place. And notice how the chair where you're sitting, how it carries you. Not trying to calm down, rather to discover the stillness, the peace, which is already here, which arises by us sitting in this way, meeting from heart to heart. And you can notice the sounds. And there are thoughts. And let that be okay. Let yourself be okay. Let this moment be okay. Exactly as it is. And then allow yourself to let your thoughts drift like clouds in the sky. Because I'm not going to ask you to think about something. And also you don't need to defend yourself or make a point. So you can let the thoughts drift and discover the space, the stillness. Even if your mind is somewhat agitated. And we can appreciate that in this moment we have everything we need. We can be fully here. Thank you very much. Usually at this moment I use a gong. One of the fundamental Buddhist teaching is that we suffer because we want things to be different than they are. And it's beautiful when we have moments where we see that ourselves. Wow, if I'm with my sadness, if I'm with my fear, if I'm with my aggression, then it starts to move, then it starts to heal, and it starts to change. suffering comes really from resisting what is. So I want to start with a very simple model of the mind, coming from the Tibetan tradition, using a metaphor. And the metaphor is the clouds in the sky. And that's the cloud and the sky. And this cloud level of our experience right now, that's the most familiar to us. That's what we, in Western traditions, in Western psychotherapy, and in other inner work, most of the time we work with that level of mind. So it's the level of mind which contains the sense perceptions, so the stream of sense data. And it's called conditions because it's changing moment by moment, and it arises from causes, and it's non-static, it's impermanent, it's fleeting. So there's a sense data right now, a stream of sense data. And then there is a conceptual mind doing something with the sense data, telling stories about it, judging it. And one of the most fundamental moves on that conceptual level is, I don't like this, and I like that. And that's where all tragedy starts, where suffering starts. As you have noticed today, in our times, or maybe not only in our times, in all times, but particularly in our times, this level of mind is often very crowded and quite negative. If you would count the thoughts you have had today about you being wrong, you not being good enough, even leading to a general sense of I'm not good enough. One Buddhist writer, Tara Brach, calls that the trance of unworthiness we are in. And we are led into that trance of unworthiness through this compulsive negative thinking. And of course, the way we treat ourselves is how we treat others. So that's why you had all these judgmental thoughts today. Looking at people and that's painful. It's painful for us not to be kind. And that is really beautiful. That we as human beings, we are happy when we are kind. We are happy when this stream of judgmental, compulsive thinking stops. And we have these moments of connectedness, of kindness. It makes you really proud to be a human being when you discover that, when you recognize that everyone you meet has that soft spot. And if you cultivate that in you, you also see it in others. And that's what you want to connect with. I don't know if this can be said in an environment like that. But what heals in psychotherapy is love. It's not the tools you learn. It's not communication skills. It's not theories. They might help. So that's the conditioned level of the mind. And then the sky. And the sky is difficult to talk about. And in the spiritual traditions, you can say all spiritual traditions, all meditation practices, and in the end also mindfulness practice is about recognizing, connecting with the depths, with the vastness of your being, with awareness itself, with that who you are beyond thinking, beyond the narrative of your life, beyond the narrative of your past. And that is an openness. And here all words are difficult to use, but anyway, I'm here to talk, so then I need to use words. But it is not something which is just for the mystics or for the Tibetans sitting in caves or for saints. It is actually breaking through in our life again and again, sometimes very powerful. And if you talk with people, if you dare to talk with people about moments of grace, moments of maybe where a Christian would say, I was in the presence of God, then you notice that it's actually a quite common experience. And I meet again and again people who have experiences, who had experience really powerful, and they are confused, they are afraid because they don't have a space where they can share this. But also in a normal day, like you have a stressed day, you feel clouded, you feel everything is narrow and you lock yourself into the prison of your own narrative, taking it so personal and so important, even feeling this will never stop. So a heavy day, like today. And then you step out, out of this building, and you notice a tree, a breeze, you notice the sky, and suddenly you see, wow, I make it all up. It's all, I make it all up. And it's kind of, nothing changed. So you still have to pay your bills, and you still need to find the new flat or something. But somehow you slide into this more panoramic awareness. And we have that capacity. Maybe some of you go to Amastrand to connect with the inner space through the outer space. So this level of the mind, which I'm now pointing to, has different names in the different spiritual traditions. So it's called the unconditioned mind because it has no causes. So what that means is we don't need to do anything to be there. It's happening right now. Without this level of mind, the content wouldn't have a space to be the content of this experience, your thoughts, the feelings you have, the sensations you have. So in a way, what I'm talking about when I say sky, I'm talking about the space in which your feelings are, your thoughts are. And a spiritual way, spiritual traditions are about lightening up the cognitive fusion with the content of your experience, meaning the identification with the content of your experience to that what is aware, that what is already free, that what was never disturbed by compulsive, destructive thinking. So in a way, it's like giving space, being more at ease, and being more intimate with what is happening in the same time. So it's not disidentification, like looking at the pain from far away. So different words: unconditioned mind, pure awareness, emptiness. That's one code word in the Buddhist teachings, emptiness. It's not emptiness in the sense of nothing. It's emptiness in the sense of there is no content. That's also not true, because of course there is a content. There's everything. It's quite amazing to stop here for a moment and to realize all what you experience right now is happening in your mind. The whole universe. Is moving through the sky of your awareness. So that's emptiness. Emptiness the Tibetan word for that level of mind is Rigpa. Just to show off that I know something. Buddha nature is another word. Yeah, Buddha nature. That is a word from the Advaita Vedanta tradition of Hinduism, ever-present witness. Ever-present witness. And then another word is ground of being. We all have a lot of projects right now in our life. Like some of you have maybe the study project, or the relationship project, or the renovation project, or the yoga project, or the psychotherapy project, or all these projects. And we are misled in our culture that we come to a place of fulfillment through completing projects. And it's like this kind of way of living. Okay, when I'm big enough to go to the kindergarten, then, and then when I'm big enough to go to school, then after a short time, probably we realize, wow, when I finished with school, then. then after I finish my study, after I finish my thesis, yeah. And then if I find the right girlfriend, then the right job, the right place to live. And then when I'm retired. And none of our projects will bring us to completion. Immediately there will be, what's next? So the message in the spiritual traditions is the only place where we are already complete, where nothing needs to be done, where we are already in this moment brilliantly sane, and where all our screwed up mental habits don't mess. That's unconditioned awareness. And I hope it does not sound like something which has nothing to do with your life. Because it is happening now. And it shines through, it radiates through in your life. It shines through, it radiates into your life, particularly in relation with others. If you connect with others. Because when we connect with others, then the self-centered attitude starts to open, starts to release. So I'm always looking for ways to talk about or ways to point to that stillness, that openness, that space where we can relax into. And of course you find it in all cultures, that's one thing you can talk about with everyone on this planet. Yeah. And just recently I looked a little bit into the acceptance and commitments therapy. And I found this level, this model, which some of them use. And so in the acceptance and commitment therapy, they talk about the wise mind and the reactive mind. And I guess we have a little bit, without me talking a lot about it, some sense of what that means. Yeah? The reactive mind, the stressed mind, the self-centered mind, the judgmental mind, the controlling, the fixing mind. And then there is the wise mind. So the self story is the reactive mind, the narrative, often negative, often judgmental. I think for us and for our clients, I don't know if many of you study psychology, I don't know. I think what I see with the people I'm working with, the source for pain where the pain, or the pain of people comes from, I mainly see the self-judgmental mind. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable as I am. I need to work hard to be better, so that Papa and Mama love me. It's really a Western mental sickness. And we have models of mind and which basically are based on the belief that basically down there we are screwed up. So, and then there is part of the wise mind is the observer self. So, and that is, of course, those of you who have looked in cognitive psychotherapy or in mindfulness, how it has been usually taught. That's what we cultivate there. Yeah? And what happens when we cultivate that capacity we have is that we loosen, what I mentioned it already, we loosen the cognitive fusion with the content of our experience, the identification, with a non-judgmental acceptance. And we can experience how healing that is. How we love these friends where we can go who don't want to fix us. It's like this miracle of healing, what happens when you meet a loving space. And you can offer this loving space to yourself. And to the extent you can do this with yourself, you can invite other people into that. And that will make you a good psychotherapist. The work you do with yourself. It's obvious that if you can't be with your fear, the client will not. That's what That's then the limit where you can work with someone. So the observer self, a beautiful, and that's not my job today, but there's so much research and blah blah blah, and people. Those of you who are interested in that, they know about this. So I don't need to. I'm not so much interested in that anyway. It's good because that's the way to sell it and to bring it into the mainstream, and it's necessary. So let's say there's a lot of scientific research showing the benefits of cultivating that observer self, which is not disidentifying from the content of your experience. That is a direction some people go. So they are afraid of their own feelings, and then they use meditation for running away. It's called spiritual bypassing. There's a lot of psychotherapists who need to work with spiritual practitioners who do exactly that. using spiritual practices for bypassing necessary necessary psychological developments. It's very common. We all do it. Because it's so damn hard to be with insecurity and fear. So, and then I was very, very happy that at least in that book, and I didn't really research if this is like a general thing in the commitment and acceptance therapy. They talk about a second part of the wise self, of the wise mind, and that is the silent self. Yeah, and when I read and contemplate what they write about the silent self, is for me they point to the sky, to what in the spiritual tradition is the ground, God, we would say in a Christian context. And the silent self is very, very delicate to point to. Because it is not really an object. It is something, and that's why it's very difficult to talk about this in this environment. Because it does not make sense. And spiritual tradition, a spiritual path, and mindfulness, how it has been practiced in the Buddhist tradition, is a practice of relaxing into the silent mind. And if you relax into the silent mind, healing happens. Based on the insight that the natural state of our mind is health, brilliant sanity. One way maybe to give you a sense of this is, imagine I would be the Dalai Lama. Yeah? So, the Dalai Lama is a practitioner who is resting in silent mind all the time. That's why he has always the best time of his life, in any moment. And that's why he can carry the pain of the Tibetan people without being destroyed. So maybe some of you have been in the presence of a person like that. So I remember many years ago I was in Australia and I attended this public talk, and there were 20,000 people in a stadium in Melbourne. In a tennis stadium. 20,000 people. And I'm supposed to make a break soon. So 20,000 people sitting there, Australians. And so there was this little stage down there. you know. And there was one chair on this stage. Nothing else. No light show, no music, nothing. And then His Holiness the Dalai Lama steps in. And he just steps into the front of the stage. He does like this. And it's like, and people start to cry. Something, and people's pain at that moment, I mean, I guess I couldn't talk with everyone, but people, I could see it, I was looking around, and people were like, ah. And there was a moment of, ah. And in a moment, ah. And this was infused with kindness, and in a moment like, ah. Where are your problems then? Yeah. So his own being in that openness, in that kind space, transmits. It's actually called a transmission in the Buddhist tradition. It's a contentless transmission. Of course, again, that's difficult in an environment like here, because what I'm talking about right now is not what I want to share. So maybe by using the Dalai Lama as an example, or maybe you have met other people like that, who through their presence just something unravels in you. Oh. So I will explore that more in the future. Also the methods of the observer self, cultivating the observer self is, I mean, that's some technique everyone can learn. And it's good. So it's something you can learn. You know, you do an 8 weeks John Kabat-Zinn course, and then you have the methods, and then you can share that, and it helps people. But transmitting silent mind, that is another thing. That's not a method you can learn in 8 weeks, and it's something you discover, something you develop. And more you discover it, more you can share it, more you can trust it. More you can trust it in yourself and in your client. Trusting doing nothing. A therapeutical invention called doing nothing. Okay, so let's have a break now. And then I will talk a bit about acceptance as a way to slide into silent mind. So let's take a few moments again to make that gesture of welcoming, a softening. And one of the instructions which are important for me is coming from a teacher called Lama Yeshe. And he says, be gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself. If you can be gentle with yourself, if you can be kind to yourself, you can be gentle with others. And there's no need to try to calm down. Your mind just does its thing. But you can discover the openness, the connectedness between us here. A presence which arises when we sit quietly together with others. Very simple, but precious. You notice how the chair carries you, and maybe you can allow yourself to soften your body somewhat. The shoulders and the stomach, the belly. Just being who you are, just being here. And the good news is you don't need to do anything to be who you are, it's already happening. And how about playing with that it is just fine as it is, that you are just fine as you are. Everything happens just by itself. So there's nothing to do for you. Relax. And notice the stillness surrounding and underlying whatever you experience right now. And notice how you can meet the others in this room in that stillness. They are so similar to you, even if you don't know their names. Human beings on their journey to wholeness, with longings and fears, carrying pain and joy. Just like you. And tasting the silent self. maybe first I can answer some questions, or if someone of you wants to make a comment. Yes.
Regarding the silent self, you have the observing self observing the self story. So the silent self is somehow observing the observing self. Or
it's containing the
observing self.
Yeah. Yes, I imagine that right now you try to understand what the silent self is.
Yes.
And that's fine, but hopeless. That's so difficult for us, because what we believe is the only way to gain knowledge is through thinking and and being able to make a clear statement. Then we know something. But the silent self can't be known in this way. Yes.
Is it the same as the sky in the other model?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's what I say now. So, yes.
I'd like to know how you think that we, I imagine that we all have this idea of getting to know the silence of
Yeah.
getting to know, we have many words, unconditioned,
Yeah.
but that is somehow a goal in itself, and that is a project.
Yes.
How do you see that?
Yeah, that's it drives me crazy, this question.
Would you repeat it?
She is bringing this paradox into this room that, talking about the silent self makes it something which we want to attain. So it becomes a project. It's called the Enlightenment Project. And I mean, I never use this word enlightenment, but some traditions would say the silent self is enlightenment, is freedom, is liberation. Yeah. It's one of these paradoxical areas when we talk about the silent self or the Buddha nature, or that it is something which is already here. There's no path. But still it seems that we can create some condition which supports us to discover it. So let's say I would we would play. No, let's say I would. Well, like if you are scared, if you are tortured by addiction, for example, and the whole day your mind is focused on that, very limited, very narrow mind. Then in that space, in that mind, the sky is untouched, but it is not recognized, it is not discovered, and it's very difficult to slow down. So there you would use methods, spiritual practices, to kind of make the clouds more transparent, so that the sky can shine through. one of the important aspects of this kind of practices which makes it possible for us that the sky shines through is kindness. So all the Buddhist practices of developing kindness, of opening our heart, which makes us happy, of course, in the moment, but also it creates more and more space. So I can't really give a satisfying answer to your question. I'm still trying to figure that out. And if you figure it out, then write me an email. Yes.
I'm thinking, how would you connect the mindfulness practice to this diagram or your own? And I'm thinking, how do you see the difference between Kabat-Zinn's mindfulness and Buddhist mindfulness?
Actually, in John Kabat-Zinn's books and also the videos I have seen and teachings I've heard, he is mainly, I think, mainly talking about the cultivating the observer self with the content of the. But in his book, for example, Coming to Senses, which is like this big book, he is also talking about meditation practice as a way of being. And he actually talks exactly about this paradox, which we now touched. Yeah? So it is there in his teachings, and you see it also in the videos. Yeah? That he, but it is, of course, it is not easy to talk about in that environment where his methods are being used. Yeah? And then this question of what is the difference to the Buddhist mindfulness. It's a big exploration, I think, and in the Buddhist tradition, the mindfulness practice is embedded in a whole different frame. For example, you have the ethics of the Buddhist tradition. So it's not just to be mindful, because you can be also a mindful sniper. Yeah? Sniper is someone who is shooting. You can become better at shooting others, or you can become better at manipulating others. And then there is, in the Mahayana tradition, in the Buddhist Mahayana tradition, there is this emphasis on kindness, on compassion. And I guess in the clinical way to practice mindfulness, you wouldn't describe it as a tool to come to that place of freedom, of openness, of completion, of fulfillment. So, short answer to a question where probably many books have written about.
So the Buddhist practice would be something like opening oneself to a possibility of the silent self.
Yes. But using, also in the Buddhist tradition, many practices are working with the observer self, working on the conditioned level. The methods of opening the heart, of and investigating into reality, and the mindfulness practices, mindfulness of breathing as a way to calm the mind, mindfulness of the feelings, to investigate into the reality of feelings. So most Buddhist practices are actually within the development model. There's a method, there's a path, and enlightenment is something far away, and I'm not enlightened, so I need to work hard to get there. And then there's methods, and all these methods, they work on the conditioned level, on the relative level. Any more comments or questions? Yes.
You said that this wasn't an environment to talk about the silent self.
That's maybe my prejudice. Yeah. It's also it's something I just started more recently to share. So I myself feel even in a Buddhist environment insecure about it, because it's very radical. If we really take it as it's said in the scriptures, then it's very radical. And I'm trained in a development model of a spiritual path. So by myself in my own practice and in my teaching, sharing the silent self is actually, it's very possible that I'm going to be thrown out. Yes.
Do you think they are mutually exclusive?
No. Definitely and that's in my personal practice, I always danced in these two traditions. So like officially mainly being in a tradition where there's a path and a method and all this study and understanding, but also all the practices and prayers and all this stuff. But secretly in the evening, then I was reading, more radical approaches from the discovery model, also using people like Eckhart Tolle or some other spiritual teachers. And I think it's a beautiful dance. To use the development model, but not with this, I need to get somewhere. But maybe using the development model as a way to open what is already. Yes.
And Western psychotherapy is then development model. What do you think of it?
Yes. But I guess we all, and I've looked into it, but I don't want to show the slide, it's too much information. But so I looked into it, or when we study different psychotherapeutical schools, we always find this acknowledgement of the power, of the healing power of acceptance, of empathy, of giving space, of, they don't call it love, but what else is empathy? What else is, accepting? I got some training in Gestalt therapy, and they assume what they call the self-regulation in the human psyche. So that if you give space, then the psyche will, loving space, the psyche will go back to a balanced state, like a river. So like a polluted river, which you leave alone. A polluted river where you stop to put toxic substances into, the river will heal itself. So similar, the self-regulation of our mind starts to heal. It's like a self-healing, our body has it as well. Yeah? It's like a self-healing capacity if we leave it alone, if we give space, if we create conditions. And very strong you find that in the work of Carl Rogers. And he's really one of the fathers of modern psychotherapy. And he describes the three attributes of a psychotherapist, what they train in that training. And one of them is what he calls unconditional positive regard. And the second one is to be authentic. And the third one is empathy. So there you have that also. This, it is acknowledged, it is seen, and it is experienced that these moments of shared silence where you create that field and you have that trust that as a psychotherapist you don't need to come up with a solution, but it will emerge in that field of acceptance. And of course, again and again, we find us in this place where we think it's our job to fix the person, to find a solution. Because something is wrong with that person. Yes?
Maybe because we don't understand the person. So in order to understand the person, we want to change him, the person into our view.
Yeah. So it is, when I gave Hannes this title of this talk, I didn't really think about what I'm going to talk about. It was just something I came up. But my initial idea of giving him this title was to make people aware that the general attitude they have, what health is, that makes them, that makes you being with your client in a certain way. Yeah. So if you assume and you have like a taste of your own brilliant sanity, of your goodness, which is part of the human package, and you sense this is also there in your client, and you see it. Yeah. And it might actually not bloom while you work with that client, but it is indestructible. And it will emerge, like it will emerge in you. Then that changes. That gives you more space to be at ease with yourself, with all the stuff coming up while you work with someone, but also with all the stuff coming up in the client. So that was like my initial idea, just to increase that awareness that the general attitude of the potential of healing, which we assume, that really that gives our work a certain direction. so from this model of assuming this capacity of mental health, which is already there, so it's a different kind of health. So usually, as I said in the beginning, when we think about health, then it should be absence of problems, absence of pain. So right now I talk about a different kind of health, a health which is always there, which we can recognize in each other. An innate perfection, an innate beauty, which all of us have. And it's I think it's possible to trust that in you more, that actually your presence can be healing. Not the wise words, but your presence. Just by being there with your client. And now client not only, just being there with whoever comes to you in pain. So this is also an invitation for you, since your next crisis is just about to come. And I'm sorry to say that, but that's what the Buddha said when he started to teach. Yeah? It was the first thing what he said. Your life is difficult. There's one damn problem after another. And it will not stop, and there is no trick like you just didn't read the right book, or your parents didn't tell you the right thing, or you just need to work harder. Your life is a mess, and it will stay a mess. Yeah? In the sense of that it will not work out the way you would like. And it's not your fault. And it's also not your parents' fault. Why do I say this? It's just... it would be really helpful if we would stop to make a problem out of the fact that we have problems. Since I find some relief in that, that's why I want to share it. So I lost my thoughts in the silent mind. Did I start to answer a question or no? Do you remember how I got here? No.
That our life would, the next crisis was just.
Yeah. But I don't remember why I said it.
Why did you say that?
Yeah.
You said it was an invitation to us.
Yeah.
Not trying to fix it. Just be with it like the therapist, so we can be with ourselves.
Yes, right. Yes. Yeah. Now I have it. Now it's back. Yeah. So, since your next challenge will come, so my invitation for you is to try that out. What happens if you give yourself the space to be with your feelings. Even just for 5 minutes. Before you start to switch on the television or get a beer or and these moments of pausing and leaning into it, they make really a difference. And yes, and then of course being supported by another person who gives you the space actually to be with this, what is happening. That's of course beautiful. And maybe some of you will be this kind of person in the future. For others. So really a valid move in a crisis is at least for some time to do nothing. And not to try to find explanations or solutions but just feeling your feelings. And then that gives you the confidence to share that with others. Any questions, comments? Yes.
In the beginning you said that empathy and love is the healing tool, whatever you might say, in psychotherapy, and that all the other tools were not that which was healing, but which place do they have in psychotherapy?
I think it's like it's with tools. They depend so much on the intention behind, and the kind of mind behind. And I think there has been quite a lot of research in the effectiveness of psychotherapy, it's many years ago I studied that stuff, so I don't clearly remember. But it seems that there is... I remember that it was what makes psychotherapy effective is not so much the school or the different direction or the tools what people do. Yeah, there are certain differences, like for some imbalances, one psychotherapy seems to be a little bit more effective than another. But like in general, it is more these deeper attitudes of the psychotherapist. Yeah. So it's putting the emphasis on cultivating these qualities inside of you, and then using the tools you learn depending on your interests and depending on, like what you like, and then using these tools coming from that kindness in you. And then actually, if you come from that place of kindness, really from this place of care, which we all have, and again, this makes it so beautiful to be a human being, that we all have that longing to share, this longing to contribute. I mean, if you think about it, why do you study what you study? There is that you want to make a difference. How do you make a difference? How do you make a difference in your life? You make other people happy. Well, what is a meaningful life? When are we really content? It's when we connect. When we feel our life makes a difference. So when you if you come from that place, then you will never cease to learn more methods. You will be always curious. To cultivate your capacity to be of help for the rest of your life. Yes.
I talked to a woman once on this phone helpline that I work on.
Sorry?
I talked to a woman once at this phone line giving counseling. It's actually a lot of the things you're talking about. It's about acceptance of saying that's mostly what you do there, I think. But I talked to a woman who she was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and she had like a very extreme sort of sociophobia. And we were talking about a lot of things, and I asked her if she tried mindfulness, and she said, yes, I tried it, but I just feel like I'm getting more psychotic when I meditate.
Yeah.
And she said, mindfulness can do nothing for me, because I've always felt that I was disconnected from everybody else. And finding some sort of inner core of calmness or silent self has never been there, so it makes no sense for me to find it. Have you experienced anything like that in your work, or could you comment on it?
No, I personally have. When I worked in a mental hospital, I was already practicing meditation, but I was not looking into that theme. But I know people who work with mindfulness, also with psychotic clients. But of course, it can't be like these people can't join a mindfulness course and do it. Yeah. So it needs to be very attuned to their needs. So when you practice mindfulness, what are you mindful of? And how long? And I'm sure there is, and there will be in the future more and more also people who, because more and more psychotherapists will be trained in mindfulness, so they will also bring this into these extreme mental states, and we'll see what can we do with mindfulness there. But I don't know so much about it. I know some people, the center where I go, there's a lot of psychologists coming there, and some of them work with that. Yeah? So what is, for example, with mindfulness of the body? Yeah? Like grounding. So I don't know. Someone else has experience with this? No. I heard quite some people saying that they are afraid of this. Yeah, it's like you can't meditate, or you can't bring this stillness to this extreme mental states. But I really have doubts about it, and I would be curious. And of course you can't send them to a meditation center, but if you work with them, I'm sure there is a silent mind. Yes.
I just want to comment that I had this experience once that the people in this kind of states are afraid of spacing out. So doing a practice that's giving space, more space, comes this fear of sort of losing boundary or too much space.
That makes sense. So their mindfulness could be used for grounding.
Also, I wanted to ask you, you said sometimes that you think that, or in your experience, love is really the healing thing in psychotherapy, but in psychotherapy we tend to call it something else. Empathy, positive thoughts.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts of why is that? Is love an unscientific concept? Or what's the problem with that? Is love and compassion unscientific?
No, compassion becomes more scientific these days. So I think it will come into the mainstream, the word compassion. But with love it's a difficult word, because what we understand when we say love is there's such a baggage with it, and so in the Buddhist tradition, the definition of love is the wish for your wish for someone else to be happy. May you be happy. Yeah, may you be happy. That's love. What we usually understand when we say love is, hey, make me happy, and watch out if you don't do it. I guess you can read psychology books without finding the word love inside. Okay, I feel I have said enough for tonight, and maybe I could encourage you to dive into that direction of the silent mind. You finding your own path, the kind of ways where you resonate with, which make sense to your belief system. It would be so beautiful if more people could connect with that aspect in psychotherapeutical work. Thank you very much for sharing this evening.